is the We Are Boom panel. And some of you guys may be Boom fans for many years. Some of you may have walked in here thinking it was the Star Trek panel, and now you're very confused, but they've locked the doors and you're trapped for the next hour. So
Don't worry, we'll make it worth it.
Yeah, totally. So, who is Boom Studios? And the reason that we started this slide is I came to Boom about 8 months ago, maybe 9 months ago now. And I've been in the industry for about 12 years. I actually have known Ross, who founded the company, since he founded the company. And I realized that I thought I knew who Boom Studios was, but I didn't. And I thought, well, if I'm a guy who's been working in this industry for over 12 years, and I don't have the right idea about this company, then you guys, as the fans, probably really know who we are, or maybe you know us as one part of us. So if you're a Boom fan, you probably know that you're either a fan of our original content that we've been doing since the beginning, or maybe you're a fan of our adult licensed material, or maybe you're a fan of our all ages material. But what you might be wondering is how do these three kind of seemingly disparate, kind of fractured lines of publishing all go together, and what makes Boom, Boom?
Had to use some sound effects. So, my name is Ross Ritchie, and I'm the founder of Boom and the chief executive officer. As I like to say, it's my fault. And I started off the company in my spare bedroom apartment in 2005, and it was me and a computer and a telephone. And what had happened was I was friends with Keith Giffen, and terrific, talented creator who's been working in the business since the mid-1970s and worked on Legion of Superheroes and Justice League, co-created Lobo, and did an incredible run of great work. Huge fan of Keith's. And I was friends with Keith through the years. He called me up and he said, hey, I'm doing a comic book over at Image Comics. I'm going to draw it and you're going to write it. I said, well, Keith, the problem with that is I'm not a writer. And Keith said, as Keith does, Keith's very tenacious, that's the right word. Yes, he's very tenacious, and he said, I'm doing a comic book over at Image, and it's called Dominion, and I'm going to draw it, and you're going to write it. And I said, yeah, but Keith, I don't write comics. I've tried to write things before, and I'm really awful at it. I'm terrible. And Keith said, well, I'm doing this comic book at Image, and I'm going to draw it, and you're going to write it. And I said, okay, Keith, well, here's how we're going to do this. I'm a huge Keith Giffen fan, so when I completely suck at writing this, since you're a great writer, you're going to come in and rewrite me, and it's not going to make our relationship weird. It's just going to make it a comic book that I actually want to read as opposed to something that I've written. And Keith said, okay, fine, no problem. And so we did a comic book at Image called Dominion, and I unfortunately proved that I was right, and I think I completely screwed up writing the comic book. And Keith went in and rewrote me and did an excellent job with it. And Keith was in town, and he was in town in Los Angeles for a convention, and we went out to a little hole in the wall to have a beer, and Keith said, I think you ought to publish your own comics. And I said, well, Keith, you know how many people have started comic book publishing companies and they failed? And Keith said, no, I think you'd be really good at this. I really think you ought to do it. And I kept saying no, and Keith kept saying yes, and he kept giving me beer. And in the morning, I woke up and I thought, I'm such a fan of Keith's work. The analogy that I would make is, Keith is a lot like Aerosmith, really big in the 70s, really big in the 80s, reinvented himself in the 90s, and is still a relevant classic voice in the space. And if Steven Tyler comes to you and says, you want to produce records, you gotta listen to Steven Tyler. So I launched Boom, and I of course said to Keith, the problem that you have is I don't have anything to publish. But Keith Giffen is very prolific, so pretty much what I'm going to start doing is publishing Keith Giffen comic books, so he'll come up with like 5 series so I have something to publish, which he did. And a great relationship. The first book we published was Hero Squared, and that launched everything for us. And then, it's just a company that I launched out of my spare bedroom in my apartment, and here we are today.
You pretty well. That's good. Yeah. You got this thing down. So normally Matt Gagnon, our editor-in-chief, would be here, and so instead we're going to be very rude and talk about him.
Yay!
So the reason it's important normally for Matt to be part of this discussion is because Matt came in as one of the earliest employees of Boom. He was employee number like 4 or 5, something like that. And he started off, he was a buyer at a comic shop in Los Angeles. He did all the buying from Meltdown Comics, and so he came from this kind of retail background. And when he came in, you know, the first thing he did as kind of coming in at an assistant, I think assistant editor level, or was it a full editor? I forget.
It's somewhere in there.
Yeah, it was like an assistant.
And he said,
I don't think we were that
he said,
there was no roles like that.
you go sit at that desk and do that stuff. And what he repeatedly tells everybody is the first thing I did was I came in and I looked at Ross and I said, I've been a retailer and I know what's important about publishing comics, and I'm going to get your books running on time.
It's true.
Because, you know, as fans and as customers, you want to know that you can show up and get your books. And so, sure enough, that's what he did, I think, with it very quickly.
Yep.
And, you know, that's one of the things we're incredibly proud of is that, unlike a lot of our competitors, we take our commitment to getting the books out to you very, very, very seriously. And the other thing that Matt would normally talk about is how, you know, in phase 2, we started off publishing all this cool original content, but we realized that
like 2 Guns, Zombie Tales, Heroes Career.
We realized that a great way to grow the company and a great way to reach out to a larger fan base is through these pre-established license books.
Yep.
And the problem we always, you know, I think fundamentally all of us have with license books is that they're typically not very good. And so then Ross asked a very simple, obvious question. What if you made them good?
Why do they have to suck?
Why do they have to suck?
And I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to talk about Farscape real briefly, which is we had an opportunity to meet with Rockne Sobin, the creator of Farscape, and it was really, really exciting. We were meeting about doing original stuff and some other projects, and we asked him if he wanted to write Farscape, and he said yes. And what we did with Farscape that was so exciting was literally the last shot of the last episode of Farscape is the first splash page on the first Farscape comic book. And so Rockne wrote the entire series in the show's canon and continued the series directly from where it left off. And that really helped initiate. We also did other licenses like Warhammer. And the folks that are into Warhammer, if there's any here, I'm sure they can echo this, don't really tolerate it being done wrong. And it's not called Peace Hammer. Right, and then of course we were nominated for the work that we were award nominated for the work we did with the Muppets.
Which brings us to this lovely
Oh boy.
young lady.
Oh boy.
Now, just let me just preface this with apparently it's become a thing that young gentlemen ask Shannon to marry them at these panels. Let me go ahead and spare you the humiliation and let you know that she's going to say no. Yeah, it's what happens. I'm not making this up.
Oh,
Keep it G-rated, Shannon.
that's right. I apologize. So I'm Shannon Waters, and I'm the Boom editor, I guess you could say, at Boom Studios. I edit the Adventure Time books and all their little spin-offs. I edit Peanuts. You know, and Ice Age and a few other craziness, the new regular show comic book that's coming out. And I came into Boom about 3.5 years back. I came in kind of when the Disney books were going strong, and I had an interview for an assistant editor position with Matt and Ross, and the interview turned into like an hour-and-a-half long discussion.
As our interviews tend.
Yes.
I left, and I was going to be home for Mr. Ritchie called me and offered me a job. At the time, I couldn't take it because it didn't make financial sense. And then we kind of entered the new era of Boom. And I got a call about 6 months later from Ross. He was like, "Still want a job?" And I said, "Yep." Got it.
I like that I sound like a 1930s like plutocrat.
I always imagine.
You want a job?
Yeah.
It's like a Perry White thing.
So I came in to him as Matt, the editor-in-chief, when he was still managing editor. Came in as his assistant, and it's the best training you can imagine. I worked with Mark Wade on Incorruptible and Irredeemable, Michael Moorcock on Elric, so that was huge. When I got promoted to editor, we had kind of, we just had, Marvel had just been purchased by Disney, and they'd taken the kids' licenses back a little bit, and so we were kind of looking for new direction that our all ages imprint was going to go in, and Adventure Time kind of came up as something interesting for us, and that was really one of the first projects I was handed as editor. That was like soup to nuts. What are you going to do with this? And I knew, I had always wanted to do all ages books. Ever since I had started editing comics, I wanted to do all ages books. And I had kind of a crazy idea with these things, is that I wanted, my background is not in superhero comics, it's not in mainstream comic books. And I am a huge fan of indie comics and webcomics, and so it was one of those things where I was like, Ross, Matt, Bryce, can I do this weird thing where I hire web cartoonists for my comic?
Yes.
And they were like, the greatest thing about Boom now, and always has kind of been, is this like commitment to trying new things and seeing what sticks, and doing the things that, people might tell you is wrong, like doing all ages comic books, 5, 6 years ago.
Yep.
And the market says, oh wait, actually, kids do read comic books. Ross will always tell you yes. And he told me yes on Adventure Time, on our strategy for Adventure Time. And
I do have a threshold though, it has to be awesome.
it has to be awesome.
That's what triggers the
That's really kind of the who we are as Boom. I always, whenever I'm thinking of like, who are we as Boom? This really tight-knit group of people that is extraordinarily committed to quality. And so Adventure Time happened, and we were really scared that it was not going to, that I was, maybe they weren't scared, but I was terrified that my strategy was not going to pan out. And it did, thankfully, and continues to, and which kind of brought us into another era in our all ages program that we're really proud of. We're doing some amazing books, and we're going to be doing some really incredible books the rest of this year and next year and beyond that I think you guys are really going to like, both licensed and original content. For all ages comics, because all ages comics shouldn't be just kids comics. Everybody should be able to pick up an all ages comic and love it. And so that's kind of this new era in Boom's all ages comics. It's comics for all ages. And so that's how I came into the Boom family.
That's right. And so normally what I would love to do is I'd love for you guys to meet everybody on the Boom team, but we're rapidly growing. We're I think at 22 people as of Monday.
Yep.
Keep saying we're going to stop, and then suddenly...
No, we never stop.
And so if I brought everybody up here to introduce themselves, this panel would go on for the rest of the day, because each of them have a really cool, interesting story. But so we decided it'd be cool to do a shortcut, because part of what makes Boom Boom is the people that work there.
I'm Vince Frederick. I'm the event coordinator.
Hi, my name is Evan Quincy. I'm the e-commerce and inventory coordinator.
I'm Shannon Waters. I'm an editor.
I'm Phil Barbaro, director of finance.
Do I say my name or?
I'm Bryce Carlson, managing editor, and I am Boom.
And I'm Boom.
And I am Boom.
I'm Boom. I'm Boom.
And I am Boom.
I am Boom.
I am Boom.
And I am Boom. I am Boom, and so are you.
So that's a look at everybody that works at Boom as of like 2.5 months ago, or added people since then. So we'll have to update that before you know it. The other fun thing is that you guys never get to see where we work. Well, up in the upper right-hand corner, that's the Boom offices. That's where we work. Right down here is the first place we did this this particular panel presentation, which is Emerald City Comic-Con. So there's Shannon, Matt, and Ross. And
My hair was a little longer.
a little bit longer.
I'm twisting uncomfortably.
But this is our team, so that's part one. But Boom is not just the people that work behind the scenes. We are obviously a big part of Boom. Oh no, wait. I'm skipping down. I gotta talk about myself now. Good thing I love talking about myself. My favorite topic. Like I said, my name is Phil Sadlick. I'm the VP of Publishing and Marketing. And some of you may recognize my name, maybe like, I know at least two of you in the audience because I recognize you. In a former life, before I came to Boom about 8-9 months ago, I was the publisher at Top Cow, which is another terrific publisher that's part of Image Comics. And before that, in another life, I was a Diamond Comics publishing rep. I was in the purchasing department. And so I've been in the industry for about 12 years, and I've known Ross because I was at Diamond when he set up Boom, and I was the one that picked up the phone, and this very boisterous voice on the other end went, "Hey, my name is Ross Ritchie, and I'm setting up a new publisher, and would you like to publish a comic? Do you know what A1 is? This anthology." Right. And I being a young punk kid who grew up on 90s comics and had no frame of reference for cool 80s British anthologies, went, "No." And he said, "Well, would you be interested in publishing an anthology with an Alan Moore story in it?" I said, "Yes." So that was how that went, and we hit it off from the beginning. But and then when I moved out to Los Angeles from Baltimore for my Top Cow job, Ross and I got even closer, and his wife and my wife are friends. We hang out on the weekends, and we had this friendly competition thing going. We'd talk about business and bounce ideas off each other. And one day he's like,
Ooh. "No, I don't mean it like that." No, come on.
The peanut gallery.
We were just hanging out.
No, we were just hanging out. No, but I think it was that thing, where it's like, I'm happy for your success, you're happy for my success, but at the same time, it's like, oh, that was really cool what you did. Let me think how I can, transform that and utilize and use that same trick. So about 10 months ago, Ross said, "Hey, we should grab lunch." And that was not unusual, so we grabbed lunch, and about 10 minutes into lunch, he looks at me and goes, "So, I know you're really happy where you are, but I think you belong at Boom. I think, we need to get you over at Boom." I said, "Ross, I'm very, very happy where I am. And I get to call my own shots, and got editorial control. I appreciate it, I'm flattered. We've got a nice little company, but no thanks." He waited about 10 minutes. "Yeah, but I really think you're a Boom guy. I really think you should come over." If you can't tell, Ross has picked up his negotiating tactics from Keith Kiffin. This is a trend. So,
and we skipped the Shannon part where I used to go into Matt Gagnon's office and be like, "Dude, we gotta get Shannon." Matt's like, "Yeah, she turned you down, Ross." I was like, "No, dude, we gotta get Shannon. We gotta get Shannon."
When Ross Ritchie wants you to come to Boom, it's real hard.
Gotta get Shannon.
It's a movable force.
Say no.
So we went back and forth and did a little dance for far longer than I think Ross had anticipated or wanted.
Yep.
But he refused to give up, and eventually I was like, "All right, you won me over," because he just kept talking about this place, this environment that they were building, this thing that was not anything that I had known before. And he's like, "I've got this fantastic team. You've got to meet the team. And let me, let's sit down. Let's talk about the ethics and the principles that drive the company." I was like, "Wow, I've never really heard anybody talk about a comic company this way." And so I gave up, mostly to shut him up.
Yes.
But I came over, and my first week was the week before San Diego Comic-Con this year. And anybody who's been to San Diego Comic-Con as a fan probably thinks it's the greatest thing on the face of the planet. Anybody who's ever worked at San Diego Comic-Con wants to cry the week before San Diego Comic-Con. And so I get in there, and Ross was like, look, I'm getting ready to have my baby. My wife's getting ready to have my baby, right around San Diego. I'm not going to be at San Diego for the first time. I need you there with Matt, and I need you leading the team. I'm like, cool, let's get in there, and I start, working with the team. And the first night of Comic-Con, I was so blown away that I felt compelled to send Ross a text, which is in the lower right-hand corner here. For those of you that can't read it, it says, your team humbles me with their dedication and hustle. Because I had never, ever worked at a place where I felt like I was the laziest guy on the team. And that was amazing. So, that's my story. And what I found is that having peeled this back is what inspired this presentation. Because what I want to do is I want to share just a little bit of my experience with you. Because what I think is that this place is special. And as you'll see in a second, you're part of that. So, the people working behind the scenes aren't the only people that are important here. Probably more important than the folks working behind the scenes are our amazing creators that we get to work with. And what I think is really cool is that Boom has worked with such a wide swath of creators. Whether it's classic voices like Keith Giffen or our friend Steve Grant here, who's on the panel with us, and I promise we'll let talk soon. Probably should let you bring up Dora.
Your slide is coming.
Guys like Howard Chaykin, Mark Wade. We've also, J.M. Donatis, who's up there as well. We've also broken a lot of new talent, giving people their first work. Up in the upper right-hand corner, that's Raphael Albuquerque, who you guys may recognize as the American Vampire Artist. He got his first job in American Comics at Boom. Gabriel Hardman is somebody who's known as a terrific artist and a storyboard artist. Boom was the first company to give him and Karina Bechko work as a writing team, and now they're writing Star Wars and like half a dozen books for other companies. Because that's what we do, we discover the awesome. And then, as Shannon mentioned, we also really reached out as a big initiative for a publisher our size, reached out to web creators, folks like Ryan North and Meredith Grand, Natasha Allegari, and all sorts of amazing creators that nobody in printed comics was necessarily aware of. So this is a snapshot. Oh, there's like one or two famous people up there too. We work with them as well. But this is just a snapshot, and then we thought, again, rather than have us talk about our creators, why not let them speak for themselves? So here's a couple guys telling you why they're Boom.
Hi, I'm Paul Jenkins, and I'm Boom, and I would like to tell you why. Over the last 20 years, I've had opportunities to write some amazing characters with Marvel and DC. I've gotten to write Batman, I've gotten to write Spider-Man, I've gotten to write the Hulk, I wrote the origin of Wolverine. And during those times, Marvel and DC both were really able to give me a lot of creative freedom to do so. Times, however, have changed, and it now forces companies like Boom to give creators like myself a lot of freedom. This really always results in a better product. It gives us absolute confidence that we're going to deliver the kind of things that we want. So I'm more than happy to kind of cast my lot in with Boom to give them the benefit of my work ethic and to learn from them and work with their amazing editorial team. So far we've had really good time together on Deathmatch. We've had some success with the serialization of Fairy Quest. And I'm looking forward to working with Boom for quite some time now. So I am Paul Jenkins, and I am Boom.
I came up with an idea for a superhero story in which the heroes would be outnumbered by the villains about 100 to 1. The protagonist would be a cop. He would make a fateful decision in the first issue, which would then have bigger and bigger repercussions. There would be more and more outrageous reveals, and kind of an oblique approach to the storytelling. And I took this pitch to Boom because I already knew from Mark Waid's Irredeemable that Boom were very open to, let's say, unorthodox approaches to the superhero genre. That's how Suicide Risk was born. I am Mike Carey, and I am Boom.
And so, because Mike didn't give you his bona fides, if you're not familiar, Mike Carey is an amazing novelist and comic book writer. He writes a series for Vertigo called The Unwritten. Before that, he wrote another series called Lucifer. And so this is one of the guys we're incredibly flattered and handles the X-Men. And the X-Men, so I don't know that. And so he's doing a new title for us called Suicide Risk.
I'm Brian Stelford. I've done covers for just about every major comic from every major comic company, including Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, The Incredible Hulk, really everything. And one of the reasons why I am working for Boom Comics is because, I mean, when I was a kid reading comics were fun. And when I say fun, I don't necessarily mean comedic or silly. They were actually entertaining. I remember reading The Death of Phoenix and The Judas Contract and getting to the end of those books and just going, wow. And I think a lot of the wow is missing from comics. A lot of times, you just want to do the comics that you loved when you were a kid. Just do comics that make people go wow. And Boom has offered me this opportunity to do comics without excuses. They've asked me exactly what do you want, and I made a ridiculous grocery shopping list, and they satisfied everything. So now I get to do absolutely unapologetic comics. I am Brian Stelford, and I am Boom.
So these are a couple images for the new series that Brian is going to be doing with us. Brian, as you mentioned, has done covers for every major company. Definitely, he had an amazing run of covers on Shadow of the Bat, which was one of the Batman titles in the 90s, and then since then he's done work for Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, you name it. What Brian hasn't had an opportunity to do in a long time is really put his stamp on a series with interior pages. So this is going to be a book with interior work by Brian, and keep an eye out online over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. We'll be announcing what it is and showing off more of it. But you guys are some of the first people outside of the Boom offices to see some of this artwork.
Hi, I'm Mike Carey, creator of Hero Bear and the Kid, and I'm relaunching a series with the amazing Boom Comics. Why would I go anywhere else? With their ability to brand, market, and promote all ages comics better than anybody out there, this had to be the new home for Hero Bear. So come join us as we launch with new stories, new materials, and definitely lots of new fun. I'm Mike Kunkel, and I'm Boom.
So if you guys don't know who Mike is an amazing animator, and back in the early 2000s, when there really wasn't a space for all ages comics, he created one of the first independent all ages hits with Hero Bear and the Kid, and we're incredibly proud to have Mike make Boom and Kaboom the home for Hero Bear and the Kid. If you are going to your local shop for Free Comic Book Day, that'll be the first place you get to check out Hero Bear and the Kid, because there'll be an all-new original story in our Kaboom Summer Special. So make sure you check that out.
Roots for my first comic, which is called Polarity, go all the way back to Say Anything's first record and the recording process for making our first record. It was the first time I basically dropped out of college and I was pursuing being a musician professionally, really for the first time. I've been doing it since I was a teenager, but basically I was sort of strung out, and turns out that I also had, in the beginning, some bipolar disorder. And what I was doing was trying to make this extremely dense concept record that was also musical, which would be our first record. And during the process of making it, I kind of lost my shit, so to speak. And the story kind of became my life, and in a very surreal way, and that kind of poured out into our first record. But I never actually released the story itself that I was planning to tell, because it kind of became what I was going through. And then, you know, literally 10 years later, I pitched a bunch of ideas to Boom, who I'd been talking to and really enjoyed as people. And they zeroed in on that idea. They were like, this is the most real, this is the most fundamental story that you presented us with, because you can relate to it so closely. And during the entire process of writing the first few issues of Polarity, they've done nothing but encourage it to be a really vital, like, truthful piece of work. And try to have it be grounded as much in reality, even though it is this fantastic adventure. So Boom has definitely been willing to take chances with everything they've done with me, and even in working with me in the first place. So my name is Max Bemis, and I am Boom.
So if you're a fan of Southern California punk rock, you know who Max Bemis is, you know who Say Anything is. We're really proud to be publishing Max's first comic work. What you may not know is that as big of a music fan, as big of as much as Max is invested in music, he's about twice the comic fan. The dude, I don't know why he chose to film that in his bedroom with the creepy doll lamp, but he should have filmed it in his comic room, because it probably puts all of yours to shame.
So, by the way, first time I met with Max, Max sat down and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Boom." And of course, you know, that's something you hear, people come to me, "Oh, I'm a big fan of Boom." You never know if that's true. When he left and got back home, he took a picture of his Boom trades, and I had never seen anybody that actually had every single thing that we've ever done.
We don't have an archive like that.
Yes.
It's pretty intense.
So, Polarity is actually in stores next week, it sounds cool. Check it out.
It's really, really good.
So the third part of who Boom is you guys, our fans. We would not be who we are, we would not be able to do what we do without our fans. And I think what makes Boom really unique is that just like our company, just like the people that work there, the type of creators that work there, you guys all come from different walks of life. You have different backgrounds, you're different types of people. We have, from very young fans with our all ages books to, traditional comic guys like us, to, ladies. We love the fact that we have lots of female fans, and so that's something that we take great pride in, and we want to make sure you guys are aware of that. You're part of this too, whether you meant to be or not. And the way I like to illustrate this is with two stories, and I'll let Ross tell the first one.
So the gentleman that's sitting amongst all those Garfield dolls is Jim Davis, who created Garfield. And when we first had the opportunity to do Garfield, Jim approached Boom and asked us if we would be interested. Of course, I was a Garfield fan from way back. I remember when the strip launched, I was completely and utterly blown away. We got on the phone with Jim, and it was shocking to me. He said that he was a huge fan of the Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers comic that we did when we had the Disney license. And so, it blows me away that Jim Davis is a Boom fan. It was it was a career hallmark for me, definitely.
And like I said, my first convention with Boom was at San Diego Comic-Con, but San Diego's a blur, and because of what my job is, I spend most of my time sitting in meetings, and I don't really get to enjoy the show. My second show was Baltimore Comic-Con, which I spent 10 years in Baltimore, and it's my hometown show. It's the one that I have the greatest affinity with. So I'm standing there at the booth, I'm working the booth with Ross and with Devin, who's hanging out in the back over there. And this little girl walks up, and she starts looking at the Garfield comics, and she picks the one that's in the upper right-hand corner there. And she's like, I'd like that one. And I look down and I'm like, oh, that's issue number 3. We have issue number 1. It's the same price as issue number 3 if you want to get the first issue. She goes, I know, but I like this one. And then she reached into her little back pocket, pulled out one of those kids' Velcro wallets, pulled it open, pulled out her own, counted out her own money and paid for that comic. And I thought, oh man, this is why we do this. And still when I think about it, because I'm a new father, it chokes me up because it had such a powerful impact. So, I know that a lot of times maybe you guys feel like you get talked at and that, we're just here to take your money, but we really love the fact that we have such a connection with our fans. We're able to talk to you about stuff you're passionate about because we're passionate about it too. So then, now you know who we are. So let's get into what we believe and finally let Stephen talk. So, we believe in classic voices. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, Steven says in the trailer. So I'm going to cue the trailer up with this. I've known Stephen Grant for 20 years, going back to a time when I worked at Malibu Comics. Stephen did a series there with the legendary Gil Kane called Edge. We were buddies, been kept up with each other at shows through the years. And I was launching a company and I needed talented creators, and I always believed that people who had stuck in the business for a long time, proven career longevity, had great creativity, and I felt that those voices were important. And we referenced and talked about Keith Giffen as another example of a guy that's in the space, and that really informs our perspective. I think that a lot of times in comics we get swept up in flavor of the month. The X-Men's hot, so what's the new X-Men? But I think that at the same time we need to pay attention to the creators that have proven themselves through the years.
Yeah. And by the way, if you were at the convention yesterday, you may not have seen this. This just went live yesterday. So outside of, if you were on the internet yesterday with all those millions of people, you're the first to see this.
You ever heard the saying, never walk back across from a diner that has the best donuts in 3 counties?
That's not the same.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. I get what you're saying, but it's not the same.
It is the same. It's the same now.
No!
Everybody sit down on the floor.
So I got the first movie made out of a Boom graphic novel there.
Yeah, and the question that's been burning in my head since yesterday afternoon is, how's it feel to see that trailer?
It makes me want to see the movie. Like now.
And you wrote the thing.
So go back a slide, because I want to make sure that you see in the bottom right corner that Stephen got a chance to see Making It Rain up close.
Yeah.
So Stephen and I embarked on this journey 6 years ago, and I got to ask the question that you got to ask. Yeah, we don't have a hell of a lot of time, so how'd you come up with 2 guns?
Well, at some point I got the idea of doing something about undercover cops, which I find just this kind of completely absurd concept. Because if you're an undercover cop, the idea is you're a bad guy, you're a good guy who's pretending to be a bad guy to get other bad guys. So you're going into a milieu where you don't really, I thought, what if you end up with like an entire gang of bad guys who are actually undercover cops who are trying to bust each other? And that was the thing I played around with for a long time. It wasn't really, it was a little cumbersome to work with, and it eventually whittled its way down to 2 guns, which was a story that I just liked. Now at the time it was impossible to sell crime stories, but I just wanted to write it so much that I wrote the thing, and I would basically hand it out as party favors to people that I knew, which is how Ross had done it. Just for their amusement. And I don't generally write things without knowing I can solve them first, but this one I just sat down and wrote.
I do remember exactly what I said to you when I first read it, and I called you up and I said, "You bastard, this is brilliant."
And he said, "I'm going to make a movie out of this." I said, "Yeah, okay, fine." And here we are.
So the other thing is, what is it like conceptualizing something and then seeing somebody make a movie out of it? Going from the stage of This is something that you thought of, that's a dream, then it gets turned into a comic book, and now, you know, it gets cast, it gets turned into a movie.
Well, it's weird.
Yeah.
There's this level of dislocation to the whole thing. People, now I'm really excited about the thing, and I don't want people to think I'm not, but there's this, you just kind of start feeling dislocated by it after a while, because it starts becoming something that wasn't, that sort of was out there without you.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's kind of this whole new thing to me now, which is great.
So I want you to tell the story. We took you out to the set. We went out to Pappy Greco's ranch, which after the movie will make sense to you. And I remember everybody walked up to Steven, the cast, the crew.
Said, so what do you think? What do you think of this set? And I looked at it and I said, it's exactly what I saw in my head when I was writing, and it was. Really strange.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had other experiences like in the first Punisher movie, well, the second Punisher movie that Marvel made, the one with Tom Jane, there's lines of dialogue that I wrote in the comics that turn up in that movie, and it's very weird to suddenly hear these things pop up. And this is like an entire movie of lines that I hear in another life. And it's just very strange to have them repeated back to you without you know, in just a completely different context. It's just, you know, just weird. I gotta say, the whole experience is just weird, but a good weird.
Yeah, lots of fun, lots of fun. All right, you've already seen the trailer.
So, kind of continuing with letting you guys know what we believe. So, like we mentioned earlier, the problem with licensed comics is that traditionally they're not very good. And so, one of the things we inherently believe is that it's possible to make quality licensed comics. And personally, my thing is that I love comics. I want as many people reading comics as humanly possible. That's my career has been about trying to get people to read comics. So if you're a fan of something like Planet of the Apes, I want you to walk in, pick up Planet of the Apes, and think comics are awesome. Because if you pick up a Planet of the Apes comic and it's not good, that's all you think comics can be. And that's just not true. So what's really gratifying is that we've received Eisner Award nominations and won Harveys for our licensed books, which is unheard of in comics. So we believe in doing it right. We believe in the next generation.
Pretty self-explanatory. If you're not publishing comic books for the next generation of readers, then they're not going to appear.
Yeah. And specifically, we believe in doing all ages comics, meaning that when we look at a property like Adventure Time or Peanuts or even something original like Snark, we want it to be just as engaging for kids as it is for adults. And hopefully we're living up to that promise. We were really thrilled that our first all ages original project, Snark, won an Eisner last year for the amazing Roger Langridge, who never won.
Yep.
We thought this was just awesome. The core of the company is, of course, in being original and doing original projects, so we believe in being original. I think that makes sense. And when we do original projects, we want them to be things that you can't get from any other publisher. Like Steven said, back when he wrote Two Guns, you couldn't sell a crime comic. I think there's stuff pretty good. They're yelling at me to stop. I'm going to wrap up in 2 minutes, I promise. So whether it's superhero deconstruction, like Suicide Risk or Irredeemable, or doing things that are a little bit more out of the box, like Polarity or Two Guns. We believe in being original. We believe in building the company of the future now. That is, reflected not only in the projects we do, but the type of people we hire, the company we've built. It's, we believe that it's what comic companies will look like in 20 years. So, recap. We believe in classic voices. We believe in doing it right. We believe in the next generation. We believe in being original. And we believe that the future is now. We are Boom Comics. Oh no, we are Boom Studios. I screwed that up.
I wasn't even saying it.
We are Boom Studios. You are too. Come innovate with us. Thank you guys very much for your time.